Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. This is an awesome opportunity to talk about AMA Phoenix's 2024 Kaleidoscope of Marketing. This is our Spectrum Awards for this year, and we're so excited to have with us today. My name is Trevor Stasek, and with us today is Anna Bryce. She's going to be able to help talk a little bit about some of the submission criteria and what it's going to take to make a really awesome submission for you for this year. Before we get started with that, just a reminder, you can always go out onto the website, which you're probably watching this on already, and you can find our links so you can click to be able to submit. You can also click to get those tickets. We're going to have the event on May 14th at the Phoenix Art Museum. And without further ado, I have a few questions I'm going to ask you, Anna. I hope you don't mind.
Absolutely, Trevor, and thank you for having me. And just so everyone knows, I've worked with a lot of the judges before in the past, and there was always comments and questions. And that's what this talk is about, to help inform you the best way to have a spectacular Spectrum submission.
Thank you, Anna. Well, the first question I've got for you is, for all of our campaign submitters we have out there, what do you think they should keep in mind, maybe as a guideline for what makes a great Spectrum submission?
I'm going to say that they should keep 2 points in mind. One is it's the AMA Spectrum Awards, and we look at marketing as a whole, not just graphic design and beautiful pictures. So this is not a beauty contest. So let's just keep that in mind. We want to know everything. We want to know strategy. We want to know tactics. We want to know results, things like that. We want to know everything from A to Z on the campaign. And number two, the submitter needs to demonstrate to the judges that they have good, clear marketing thinking in how they approach the issue. And the issue is the reason that the campaign even exists, and then how they developed their strategy and the entire campaign. So those are really just two very basic things that if they keep that in mind, I think it'll help them create this really good Spectrum submission.
Well, it sounds to me like if they are doing that, that kind of is going to fill in a lot of that required information. So, is there certain required information that they should be including in their campaign submission?
Yes, there is. And whenever I would get a phone call or an email from someone saying, like, what is it the judges want to see? This is what I would tell them. I said, there are 6 elements that the judges are asked to evaluate. And if you include information on all of those 6, you will have a full, very descriptive submission. And judges won't be wondering about things. They won't have questions because it will all be very clear. So let me just say what these 6 elements are. Number 1 is context. Now, just for people who have submitted before, we used to call it insights, but that term seemed to confuse people what that meant. So context. So really, you're talking about why the campaign exists. Number 2 is goals and objectives, okay? Because for you to develop a strategy and a campaign, you need to have goals and objectives. What do you want to accomplish? Then number 3 is strategy. We want to see what you're thinking, what your plan is, and how you're going to plan to be successful. The next point is tactics. So what are you going to do to action your plan? Creative execution. So again, we do want to see pretty pictures and we do want to see beautiful design in the campaigns that require design. Now, there's going to be campaigns that creative execution is less, meaning like SEO marketing campaigns, things like that. But you do want to include creative execution in your marketing submission. And then the last thing is results. That is something that a lot of people leave off, and it leaves the judges saying, but I don't know how this campaign succeeded or not. Please include results, because it's like reading the whole story and then it abruptly ends. So please include results.
Wow. So there's really a lot that goes into one of these campaign submissions. I could easily see, you could just write on and on and on, and you could just have this huge, unwieldy type of campaign submission. But I don't really know. What do you think is a common theme we see with those campaign winning campaigns? Are they like really large with everything thrown in? Are they kind of edited down? Like what makes what do you see in a winning campaign?
Okay. I think this is a very simple sentence, and then we will elaborate in some other questions and answers. But one of the things we see commonly with the winning campaigns is the people who put the submission together, they give themselves enough time to do that. It's clear that they thought this submission out. It's very clear that they included everything that needed to be included. It's very clear that they didn't decide to submit the day before at 10 p.m. because it doesn't look like a rush job. It's very clear. It's very descriptive. It includes all those 6 elements that I just said. That being said, even though we're saying we want all this information, it also needs to be clear and concise, or as concise as it can be. Okay. It needs to include everything that needs to be described in the campaign, but it also needs to be as concise as it can be. So I know that sounds a little contradictory, but I guess the key to being concise is making sure that all the relevant points are included and keep out all the fluff, keep out anything that's irrelevant. Because, keep in mind, judges are judging more than one campaign, and we want them to not be overloaded, especially with, we don't want them overloaded with irrelevant information. So give yourself enough time, be very clear, be concise, but include all the relevant points that will answer any question that you think a judge might have.
I think that is pretty clear, Anna. Thank you. So I do have another question for you. One thing we've heard back is some judges say maybe a submitter didn't tell us what the results were. Do you think maybe judges feel that there's one thing maybe that's missing that causes a whole campaign to get derailed? What are some of those things maybe that do you think were missed in prior submissions that are easy fixes?
Yeah, and you are right, Trevor. These really are easy fixes. And really where it starts, the most comments I've gotten from judges is the context element, is they did not give context. Why does this campaign exist? What is the problem that is trying to be solved? What is the result you want to have? And that's a little more in the goals and objectives. But one thing one of the judges kept pointing out to me was, if you miss the context element of your submission, it then snowballs into being a problem with goals and objectives and strategy and tactics and creative execution and then results,
It
you know?
snowballs.
So, yeah, so if you don't start from that very basic point of, I've got to explain why this campaign even exists. Now, there's two parts to that. If you're an agency, you have a client that has come to you, or a potential client, and has said, I have a problem. This is what we need to solve. Or an issue of, we want to do something like we want to introduce a new product, or we need to increase revenue, you know. So that's not a problem per se, but it's the reason the campaign exists. So you really have to give the context. And if you miss the context, I don't know how you're going to come up with goals and objectives or strategy, because you're really missing part of the story. That is something that the judges have said over and over again, that the context is missing, and then it lessened the quality of the other points. And you have a chance of making every part of your submission outstanding if you get that first part right.
You really need to understand the why.
You need to understand the why. And, you know, one of our judges would say, you know, this is what we do for a living, right? So we should actually be good at writing this kind of thing up, which is true, right?
You
If
know,
you're going to pitch it to a client.
I think that kind of segues into the next question a little bit here. So there are sometimes our judges see, great submissions, some that maybe could use a little bit more work, but what do you think might be one of those big mistakes that judges have seen as they're reviewing the entry submissions? Because I think it's related to what you were just talking about.
Yeah, I think you are right, Trevor. One of the biggest complaint from a judge is not enough documentation. I've heard judges say, I read through their submission and it didn't show me everything. So then I went to their website and looked for it. Or, you know, so again, what that did was that created a judge having to go find the information and then say, oh, there's the answer that I was looking for. Really, it should have been there all along. And again, I implore people to remember that. Do you imagine if a judge is judging 10 of these and each time they had to go find the answer? There were times that I had questions from judges where I then went back to the submitter and said, hey, the judge is asking, and they're like, oh, okay, let me give you this, you know. So all relevant documentation included. In the same token, leave out the fluff, leave out the irrelevant stuff, because you don't want them having to look for what they actually need. You know, they shouldn't have to look for the relevant stuff. It should be very obvious. And you know, it just needs to be very well documented. That's the best way I can put it,
Totally
with
makes sense.
quality information. And it's that whole quality versus quantity, right? Leave out the fluff, only put the relevant stuff in there, make their job a lot easier. There's two quotes from two of the judges that really make me laugh, but you'll get the picture when I say this. One of the judges said, if I had more time, I would have written something shorter. Perfect. Write a beautifully concise, clear document with the exact irrelevant information and keep it as short as you can. I love that quote. And then another judge has said, just because you have a whole piece of paper doesn't mean you need to use the whole piece of paper. And it's the same point.
I'm
Relevant
thinking about it.
information, clear, concise.
I'm thinking about it from that old marketing point of view where more space, give them white space.
Yes. Yes. You know, again, that makes it easy for the judge to spot the relevant information. And one judge had given a really good point. He said, don't force the judges to hunt through your entry to find the relevant points. Maybe what you do, you know, perhaps the way to solve that problem is you make a relevant point a headline or a subheadline. So it's easy to spot, and then you describe it. I love that idea. If that works for you, do that, because it's an easy to spot, you know, point that a judge needs to look at, and then you can describe why it is your headline. I thought it was great advice.
So, Anna, I want to pivot here to kind of a serious question.
Right.
Something that sometimes people bring up is They are very connected to the community. Sometimes it's a small universe. They may know a lot of different people. How are we ensuring that there aren't conflicts of interest with our judges?
Right. And we're very careful about that. We usually have around 30 judges. So that also gives us a little leeway in that if there is a conflict with one particular company or campaign for whatever reason, um, we can switch a judge off that campaign and put a different judge on because we have a good pool of judges. We also do a mix of local judges, experienced local judges. We usually try to keep it at a certain job title and higher. Um, so we know that the judge has a certain amount of experience and is qualified to judge. But then we'll take about 50% of the judges and they'll be from elsewhere
Okay.
around the country, which is a great way to do that because you really get a nice mix of judges. And we really have had, judges want to do a good job. And they will tell you, I did have one um, campaign assigned to a judge who then said, look, I need you to give this to someone else and give me a different one because I have been working with that client as a consultant. So we make sure there's none of that. Nor do they want to judge. They don't want to judge that campaign. That gives either an unfair advantage or an unfair disadvantage, So we don't want any of that. So we take great care in making sure that that does not happen.
I think that everyone really respects that and appreciates that about our judges. So hopefully they'll be able to see that reflected and understand that we don't have any bias and we try to protect against that.
Right, exactly.
So another logistics question that we get from time to time is someone may want to submit more than one campaign, maybe two, four, five campaigns, or even 10. You know, can they
Yeah,
do that?
absolutely. There's really no limit to how many can be submitted. We've had people submit far more than 10. And, a lot of times that's an agency because they have a lot of clients and a lot of different marketing groups working on the different campaigns. So they do submit multiply, and that is no problem whatsoever. But I did want to mention another thing about submitting multiple submissions, marketing entries. And this is a really great point that again came from one of the judges. You can have one major campaign, and that campaign might qualify for multiple categories. And to give you an example, like I'm thinking about one that I have, like a campaign that I'm working on right now with a client, and it's a rebranding campaign.
Okay.
So, a new name, a new logo, a new website. So I just named a couple things there. Website category, logo category, brand marketing campaign, digital marketing campaign, and brand collateral.
It's really kind of all expansive there.
Right, right. And the point the judge made about that is, so now you have one campaign. So you're writing a submission entry, and you can take that submission entry as a basis. Now, obviously, you have to change it for each of the different categories for it to make sense, but you've already got the basis, the meat. You can use a lot of what's in the basis of your submissions, now your multiple submissions. You can use a lot of the meat of that submission and then make the tweaks that you need to make to be appropriate for the website category, for the logo category, for the brand marketing campaign category, etc.
Customize it
So
for each of the individual categories.
yes, exactly. So I thought that was a really good point that he made, because a lot of times when we talk about multiple submissions, they are literally separate submissions. It's a really great point to think about a big campaign you're working on, whether you're an agency or whether you're a corporate company, a big campaign you're working on, and then what it might fit into in other categories. Because like SEO marketing campaigns is another one that I didn't mention here. Apps categories, like, did you need to create an app for it? That's another one. Social media campaigns, that's another one. Because again, when you have a big campaign like that, you're putting a plan together, right? You're putting a strategy together. And that strategy includes a lot of different tactics. So now take a look at all those and what categories do they fit into?
I'm just thinking of some of the major movie awards that are out there, right?
Right.
Where you could have someone that wins for the picture, but you can also have individual actors, directors, special effects, and it's the same way here. It sounds like where we can have someone that submits for a big campaign, but each of those individual components plays a part too.
Right. That's a really good analogy. And we want people thinking that way too. Because again, the people who have worked on the campaign have put a lot of hard work into it. Wouldn't it be great if you're a finalist in the American Marketing Association Spectrum Awards and then you possibly win? That would be great. And it's a way to think about it, like how you can even reward your team, just something to think about.
I think I agree.
And I want to ask you a question because I know that we have new categories this year. And we know that there's a technology that's been a very hot topic. So what are the new categories for 2024, Trevor?
I'm so glad you asked me that, Anna. I've been dying to tell people about artificial intelligence, and we have three awesome categories coming up this year. It's something that we haven't done before, but we're really hoping that people have had a chance. It's been out there really at the forefront for at least a year now, maybe 2 years, and some of our different marketers out there are really digging their teeth into it, and they've had a chance to do some great work with it. So the three categories we have are AI in marketing campaigns, AI in visual design and brand identity,
Mm,
and AI in strategic planning. Now, there's a little bit of a difference between all three of those. Let me just explain for a moment what those are. So AI in marketing campaigns, that's going to focus a lot more on the written copy and how you're leveraging that AI technology to really communicate your message and drive conversions. It's how are you using it to enhance those promotions. The AI in visual design and brand identity is really looking more at that visual aspect. So it might be using a tool like Midjourney or the Photoshop Generative Fill or Dolly or some of those other tools that are out there to really enhance your logos, brands, and graphics. And then you might also incorporate that into some of your brand guidelines and how are you leveraging that into your collateral materials. And then that third one we talked about, the AI in strategic planning. One of the really fascinating things about artificial intelligence is that it has the ability to incorporate information, but it can also analyze information, can be used to leverage to look at trends and do data analysis, perform market research, and it can go out online sometimes. Sometimes you can use different prompts to get different information. All of this is really great because you can kind of find ways to incorporate that into your decision support, your decision making process. In other words, this category is all about how are you using AI in your
mhm.
strategic planning to enhance the impact of your marketing leadership.
Right.
Oh, and I should mention with all three of these categories, and certainly with all of the categories in general, we don't want plagiarism. And one of the challenges you sometimes hear about with AI is because it's
Mhm.
generative content, it's pulling from a wide range of data. And there's the possibility, however remote, that maybe your AI is going to pull inadvertently some plagiarized information. We do want to put out a disclaimer that we all follow the AMA Code of Conduct and we are on the honor system, but we want to make sure that uh, we are not violating copyright, we are not plagiarizing, and the AMA will not be held responsible just in case there is any of that inadvertent plagiarism or copyright infringement that pops up. We just want to let you know that we don't support any of that particular type of infraction. So we do
Right.
appreciate your, just checking your work before you submit that.
And that's a really great point, and to have everybody who is submitting to be aware of that. Excellent point. And I think these three categories are going to be exciting. It's going to be really fun to see what the campaigns are that come in. I'm excited to see that.
I'm really curious to see how people are using this new technology and how I can learn from it, myself. And I think it's just fascinating, fascinating stuff.
And by the way, just a little side note, the judges enjoy judging. I get so many compliments about, we're really happy that you asked us to judge. And we really enjoy seeing what other people are doing out there. So it's fascinating to them as well. And especially with these three new categories, I just think it's going to be a ton of fun this year.
We're gonna have a lot of people that want to judge those categories in particular, I imagine.
True. Very true.
So, Anna, we've been talking for quite a few minutes here, and we're getting towards the end, but I had one big question. If there was one major takeaway that, makes their effort worthwhile to go ahead and submit, what do you think that might be? What's that key takeaway?
Yeah, but talking to the judges, over the years, over and over again, I really do think the key takeaway is to allot the proper amount of time to write the submissions because we give a lot of time, right? We're starting to accept the submissions end of January and it runs all the way through March something. How's that for specific dates? But you get what I'm saying. Take the time to write the submissions because those 6 elements that we laid out, context, goals and objectives, strategy, tactics, creative execution, and results, you will not have to rush through them if you allow yourself enough time. And then I think this will help people if they think of it this way. Like you've already created the campaign. You've written a plan for the campaign. You've written objectives and goals for the campaign. And then you've written a strategy. You've written the tactics that you want to use because your strategy dictates that. So you have all that information. So that's why a well-written campaign submission is a must, right?
Right.
But you've already written it. You've written it for your client or your prospective client. Or if you're a corporate marketing professional, you've written it already for your management team or your boss, to get the go ahead. So in both those scenarios, you had to have a well-written piece to submit to either your client or your management. So do the same here. A well-written submission. Take the time to do it, allot the proper amount of time. Maybe you do it over, you do one day, you do another one the next day. It's always a lot easier than having to do 5 and allot the whole day to do it or whatever. But that I think is the best. I think that's a really great takeaway. But even so, it's a reminder that you've already written this stuff out and you've probably written it brilliantly. Now just take from that writing and describe it to the judges so they see what it's all about. You've lived with the campaign for weeks or months or a year. They've lived with it for the hour that we just handed it to them, and then they're going to review it, you know? So well-written campaign submission.
Sell and tell. Tell your
I
story.
think that's the biggest takeaway, and a lot the proper amount of time.
I do want to just mention, because you had brought up the dates, our early bird submission deadline will be February 27th, and our standard deadline for submissions will be March 29th. If for some reason you need an exception to that, reach out to us so we can discuss that. But those are the scheduled deadlines for this. Uh, so I think there's one last question before we're done here, and that is, you know, there's always these like hidden benefits to things that are out there that you just maybe aren't thinking of, but maybe you've got some, you've done this before. What are some of those hidden benefits of submitting to the AMA Spectrum Awards?
Yeah, I think there are some really good hidden benefits there. One is we have other organizations, really fabulous other marketing and creative organizations. One of them being AAF Phoenix, or also known as the Phoenix Ad Club, and the other Azima. And AAA Phoenix has the Addy Awards. And they are before ours. They are in March, and their deadline is in January sometime. And so there's a chance that you already have a submission written. Now, their criteria for a submission might not be exactly like ours. And I honestly don't know what their criteria is. Same with the Tims, but you have information written up. You can take that basis of information that you have and you can develop it into the what we described with our 6 elements that need to be in there. So you already have the information, repurpose it. You know, I always say that to clients. Like, if we do an effort of any kind, I don't want that effort to be a singular effort. I always want any marketing effort we do, I want it to be used towards multiple efforts if possible. And here's a case where you can write your submissions for the Addies first, then you can come to the AMA 2 months later and write the submission. And then a few months later, because the Tims are usually in, I think, October. And then you can take your AAF Phoenix submissions and AMA marketing submissions and translate it into your TIM submissions. And why not do that? You might as
Scalable
well. You
and
could
repeatable.
be a reorganization winner, right?
Yeah,
That's one thing. Yeah, that's one thing that is one of those hidden benefits. Another is we know of agencies who have actually gotten clients out of this event and have met prospective clients, or they've seen corporate companies that submit and have been able to introduce themselves, you know, and get them as clients.
it's almost
So
like you're pitching.
it's a great net. Yeah, right. Almost like you're pitching. And it's a really terrific networking event. And, you know, there's 150, 200 of the best marketers in the Phoenix metro area. It's really a fun event, and we're all friends. And sometimes it's the only time we see each other all year is at an event like this. So it's a really great time to meet up with fellow marketers and catch up and exchange information and see what everyone's doing and what new cool things you're all doing. So, you know, and maybe you get a client out of it. Maybe you get a new collaborator out of it. You never know. And
I love
then
that.
we touched on it earlier, and I know marketers who have done this. Um, it's very motivating to marketing teams, especially young marketers on marketing teams. But every marketing team is made up of a bunch of professionals, a group of professionals who work really hard on these campaigns. And what better way to be validated by someone else other than your boss? You're a finalist in the American Marketing, you know, Phoenix Spectrum Awards. You're a winner in these Spectrum Awards. You are now part of an award-winning marketing group. That's a resume thing. That's a recognition thing. A lot of people just like to be told they've done a really good job at their job,
Pat on the
right? Money
back.
is not the number one. Yeah, right. The studies have showed that money is not the number one motivating factor in our jobs. Recognition is something we really like to get, but it's a great way for a boss to be able to give that recognition from an outside source.
That is fascinating. Well, Anna, we've had a
Yeah.
lot that we've
And you know
talked
what?
about. Oh, go ahead.
There is one other point I just wanted to make that I did forget that I thought was a really good point. We talked about the importance of describing context and that being the starting point of your marketing submissions. I've been told by judges before that in that context section, people have said the client contacted me and asked me to do this campaign. And that was what they called context. And I just want people to understand that that is not context. Like, yes, the client contacted you, but really what the context is, why did they contact you? They contacted you because they had an issue or a problem that they need to solve.
The root cause.
That's what context is. Yeah. Please do not leave context as somebody asked me to do this campaign.
Well, I want to say thank you for taking the time. Before we wrap, if you don't mind, I'm just going to summarize some of what we talked about here and make sure I understand
Perfect.
it correctly. Does that sound okay?
That
So,
sounds great.
some of the things you covered, this isn't a beauty contest. We want to make sure that we are demonstrating, the people that are submitting, they should be demonstrating good, clear marketing thinking. When they're writing that submission, they should really keep in mind those 6 elements our judges are going to evaluate. Those would be context, those goals and objectives. What's the strategy that was used? And then that strategy, how did that evolve into tactics? Then there's creative execution and the results. So those, I believe, would be those 6 elements. Then another thing you'd
Correct.
brought up, and you've mentioned quite a few times, putting in the time so that it looks like it's a finished product. Take the time to put in an excellent marketing submission. I understand those are the ones that are going to be the clear winners here. Uh, the context, that why question over and over again, just got to answer that. And if it's missing, your whole submission could be derailed. So that's something that seems very clear, and just people need to keep that in mind from the starting point, and everything builds on from that. You've brought up the relevant documentation, so make sure that you're including just that concise, clear documentation. Don't throw don't throw spaghetti at the wall. Don't include the fluff. Don't include irrelevant documentation. Just include the relevant information that's going to make your why and how you solve that clear. And then there's writing your submission like you're pitching a new client or maybe your boss or management team. And if you think about it, you might actually be pitching them because you don't know who else is going to be in the audience there. Does that kind of
Right.
sound like a good summary there?
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. And again, when I say write your submission like you're pitching a new client or your boss or management team, it's really meant in the context of you have to write very clearly, very intelligently. You have to be very specific. You have to be very descriptive. And if you keep that all in mind, you will have an excellent spectrum submission.
Thank you, Anna. So thank you to everyone that's been watching this. I've been Trevor Stasek, and on the line with me has been Anna Bryce. We look forward to seeing you at the upcoming Kaleidoscope of Marketing, our Spectrum Awards for 2024.